Welcome to Unit 2, Intro to HTML Forms. This end of unit build is pretty slick and will act as a foundation for the remainder of our builds in the intro level units. That's the remainder of Intro to HTML, Intro to CSS, and Intro to JavaScript. I have on screen both Visual Studio Code with the answer key to this unit's build because it's a pretty complex one, and we're going to use this as, like I said, we're going to use it as a foundation, so we want to make sure that we get it right. It's another reason that I have it up on screen. I'm actually doing a screencast instead of just putting the HTML out there. The HTML will be available for download, but I absolutely recommend that you go through this process. So the Google Search API accepts HTTP GET method requests. You can see this if you go to google.com, which I have, and let's search for the word test. Okay. I'll hit enter. And you can see across the top that the base URL is https://www.google.com/search. Everything from here is now an attribute or a URL query string parameter that's passed through that we're going to duplicate via an HTML form submitting via GET method to the search API. So a lot of this we can actually get rid of. That source HP is probably the home page. The EI, I have no idea. But do you see where the Q equals test? There's going to be a lot of other stuff after this. I guess that's the original query, OQ. Let's just say, and there's a bunch of extra stuff that Google's going to use to get an idea. Wow, it really goes on for a while. Now there is, depending on your browser, depending on the time that you see this, a 3,000 URL character limit based on HTTP GET method or based on URL length limitations. If you're using the GET method, you could see where posting a lot of data or submitting a lot of data could be an issue, which is why for large form data submissions, we tend to go with post. But if I simplify this query just to google.com/search Q Q equals test, and I run this, I get back the same exact results. And that's what we're going to build out in our build this week. We're gonna do a few other cute little things as well. If I click on news, let's just say I want to search news. Again, it loads a lot of stuff in here, but the one that we're looking for is this TBM equals NWS. So without even looking at the Google search API documentation, haven't pulled that up, know nothing about it. If I hit that URL, it's going to, and you know what, just to prove it, let's cut this out, run my search, and now simply append that to here. We'll run that search. Pretty basic stuff. So what I'm going to do here is show you our example Google search. So I have a simple form. I've defined the method as get and the action as the HTTPS google.com/search. I'm setting the target to blank, which means it'll open up in a new window every single time I run, or a new tab, depending on your browser preferences, uh, every time I run a search. I have in a field set with a legend. Those hovers are getting annoying. My Google search. Uh, I have divs set up here to act as rows. Now, we'll get into styling later, but I didn't want everything to run in together. So remember, divs are block elements. Okay, I'm going to try not to hover over actual markup because that's getting really annoying. Divs are block element or block style elements. So they display 100% of the width. So if you put a label and input as we have here, which are inline elements, if you put them inside of a div and then put a div at the end, you don't have to use BR elements or break elements. You can actually get away with the clean markup using the actual structural markup. Hey, this is a block, or this is an inline container element like a span. You don't have to worry about putting in carriage return to get to the next line or to end a line. We're actually going to use the block elements to take care of that. So we have in here a label where I've set Q as the name of my input field. Now, the ID ultimately doesn't matter with the exception of the tie-in for the search keyword. If you click on a label that's ID'd, or if you click on a label that's for an ID of a UI element, when you click on that label, the cursor will fall into the input or the UI control. Another neat little trick. We're going to see this in play, but I just want to walk you through this build. The next div, or the next row, if you will, has a label, the search type. Now, I've gone through, and these basic ones, your all, which we're just going to leave blank, as you can see, because if I pass this through without a value, it defaults back to the all search. So it's going to return everything. So we can actually get away with just leaving that as all. You'll set the news, you'll set the images, you'll set books, you'll set vid for videos. And this I actually walked through the API, not the API, but clicked on each one of these as I ran my search to find out. So if I go in here and I type in vid, it's going to jump to the vid tab, or rather the videos tab, because it's running a search for videos using the keyword test. So we go into that, and as you've seen with our others, the next row is going to be a very simple submit or reset, and that's based on input type. Again, no functional JavaScript, no JavaScript at all here, no styling. This will look ugly. It's not supposed to look pretty right now. We will get into CSS styling. What I want to make sure after the end of this unit that you understand form submissions, at least to the point where, okay, I know what a get does and I know what a post does. And now I have something that I can actually play around with because I have a live HTTP request consuming service. That's the Google search API that will take my request and give me something. So without further ado, let's go in libraries, documents. I could have done this a better way. You know what? I'll actually use code for what it's there for. So let's reveal in File Explorer, and let's go ahead and open that up. So as you can see here, really ugly. But if I do a search for my 8-year-old's been using this and apparently looked for snotbag. I'm going to spare us all, and I'm not going to look that up, but I might have to clean up my autocomplete. Yikes. Let's do a search for uh, TUI. I'm afraid to see what this is going to pull up. Um, we'll set the search type. Let's set it to default, and let's run a search. Oh, okay, so it pulled up the Fountainhead. And a whole bunch of TUIs that are probably not related to me. So if I go ahead and close that, and I switch this over to videos, and I run a search, it's going to pull up all videos. If I close this and I switch it over to images, that's a bunch of TUIs. Okay, so, and clear all will actually reset these all back to their default values. Again, no functional JavaScript here, nothing but raw HTML and the definition. Again, if I close out of this, regain my my system's composure. There we go. So no real, it's very basic. It's designed to be that way though. Don't get frustrated that you're not learning how to do these amazing things out of the box and some 12-year-old kid is coding circles around you. This is where you need to start these fundamentals, getting these down. And this is a pretty slick little example. This is an example that when my kids came to me and said, speaking of 12-year-olds that can code circles around us, when my kids came to me and they wanted to learn basic programming and they were interested in web programming specifically, I said, okay, let's take a look. We'll look at HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And this is the example that I gave them. This is the example that I give anyone who wants to get started in web development, that you have to understand how the HTML raw elements, the basic elements function before we can get into really, really slick stuff. So I will include, I still want you to build this thing out. I will include this page in sections within the rubric just so we have a good starting off point when we get into styling, so you don't have to adapt the courseware to meet what you set up as far as structure. If you say, well, I didn't use field sets and I used a heading here instead of a legend, to ensure that you don't have to constantly modify the content or the course content, I'll make sure that I include this unit build as part of the assignment. But I strongly urge you, take this, build around, play around with it, throw some additional stuff in here in a playground version. Call it Google search Greenfield and just go nuts. But we're going to come back to this Google search.html field or form, HTML page, sorry. And we're going to use this, like I said, moving forward. Any questions, as always, feel free to reach out either in the classroom or via email c2e@dominoguru.com. Don't search for the word TUI because apparently I'm not on the first page on anything, and you'll wind up trying to email your questions to a fictional character from an Ayn Rand book. Who knew? Thank you, and any questions, any comments, any feedback is always welcome. Take care.